Right, so I've got my overalls on again and we're back in the workshop with the Tuono, but this isn't the day after I did the engine service work. This is a few days later, and if I'm honest, we're a little bit short of time. Superbikes and van problems and, you know, general life has got slightly in the way of me prepping my own bike, but today I do have a little bit of time to do a little bit of work on it. Now, obviously, I would like to do the fork service and the shock service and do the linkage and stuff like that, but I haven't got time today, so what I'm going to do today is improve it, and we're going to improve it with some better brakes. So the standard brakes say Brembo on them, and I'm sure they are made by Brembo, but they don't actually stop it particularly well because it's a big fast motorbike and these brakes are not particularly good. So we're going to improve them with some better Brembos. So these are the Stylemma calipers. They are the same bolt hole spacing at 100mm. Generally Japanese stuff's 108mm, mostly European stuff and some Jap stuff that's Brembo from the factory is 100mm, and so this should be a direct fit in place of that. Conveniently the bleed nipple point to the same point as well, so I don't have to change the brake lines. So what I'm going to do is give these a little bit of a clean and pop them on there, and then while I'm at it I'm also going to fix the mass cylinder. So the standard mass cylinder on a 16 bike is an axial mass cylinder, so it pushes it along that way, the plunger goes that way, sort of parallel to the handlebar. Modern axial brakes, radial brakes even, as you pull them, pull the lever in and it gives you a better squeeze basically, and so less stuff flexes, you get more brake pressure, it's just a better system. I'm very surprised that Aprilia actually fitted these quite old axial mass cylinders to the Tuono, but that and the calipers together mean it stops okay, but it's not brilliant. So I'm going to change that as well. So I nearly changed the original Brembo for a better Brembo, but then I decided I would try something a little different. So we have a HEL master cylinder to go on it. I will admit this is the first time I've fitted a HEL master cylinder on one of my bikes. I use HEL brake lines a lot and they're excellent. And I decided, let's try a HEL master cylinder. Some of their early master cylinders, I will admit, had a bit of a leaking issue, but they've been doing them for a while now, I mean constantly improving them. So this should be considerably better than that, especially when it's mated up to the newer calipers. On the bottom of the mass cylinder you'll see this adapter that I've got, and basically I've made that the other day. It's actually machined at a slight angle as well, so when the mass cylinder is mounted on the bike this doesn't end up with a load of air trapped at the far end of it, and the idea of that is that I can still run the original brake line, because if I change the brake line, because it's an ABS system, I have to change the lines that go from there all the way through the bike to the ABS pump that's under here and all the way back again, and let's face it, that's just going to be a faff. They're braided lines anyway, so I'm going to leave the standard ones on, but it just meant I had to make an adapter to suit. And the final modification we have to make is the mirror comes off the standard mass cylinder, and that's a little bit of a faff because I want to keep the mirror in the standard location, which means I've had to buy in an adapter that basically clamps the master cylinder to the handlebar but with a mirror mount on it. So easily found on the internet, but that means I can keep the original mirror, which is just better than having some piece of naff stuck on the end of your handlebar. Before I start undoing anything, I'm just going to take the reservoir cap off and I'm going to basically soak the old fluid out of it so we don't have an excess of spare fluid floating around when we actually start undoing things. Right, I'm making progress now, as in the original mass cylinder is off and my new HEL mass cylinder is on. Couple of little bits to point out. There wasn't really a mounting point for the reservoir. There is nothing to bolt it to, and so using an Obsession Engineering bracket available from the website, I've mounted that to one of the mass cylinder sort of mounting bolts, but then I had to put a little spacer behind there so it wasn't sort of trying to recess into the hole. So that's now fitted. We've got some Tygon tubing. This stuff's awesome, it doesn't sweat. You can see your fluid through it, it doesn't discolour, it's amazing. I'd imagine it lasts forever, so the environment maybe doesn't like it, but that's not a concern to me right now. It is quite expensive, the proper stuff, but it is really, really good. So that is ready to have fluid put in it, except for there's no point in putting fluid in there until I've changed the calipers. And the first thing I really need to do is clean the ones that I bought second hand. So these are fairly clean, but they're not absolutely mint, so I'm going to get some Moto Wash, spray them in that. It's basically just a bike washing detergent, and that will be really good for cleaning them. Get the toothbrush in there, scrub all the old brake dust and dirt out of them, and then give them a rinse off and a blow off with the airline. One trick, don't use washing up liquid to clean your calipers, because it's full of sulphur. No, sodium, that's the one. Basically, it's full of something that's like salt, and there's no point washing your calipers in salt water. Alright, give them a swirl, chuck some new brake pads in them, bob them on the bike. That bit was nice and straightforward. Calipers unbolted, new copper washers on the banjos, they are the same thread, they are the same banjos, those ones in. These calipers are a little bit shallower, but there is enough thread in the holes that you can just wind the screws, the bolts in a bit further, and so that was a pretty easy swap around. I'd given them a clean before I fitted them, and I fitted some EBC EPFA pads, so they're like the fast road track day pad. They are actually the same pad I had in the previous calipers, so this will give us a back-to-back of how much better this brake setup is, and it best be better because we are a few quid into it already. Next thing then is to bleed it up. I'm going slightly overkill with racing brake fluid. This Motul RBF 700 is awesome. We've actually tried it in the BSB bike back to back with the Brembo stuff, which is offensively expensive, and actually got less fade with this. So that's going in because the bike does get used on track, and we'll go and get some bleeding going. I could go for the old-fashioned pump the lever, open the bleed nipple, close the bleed nipple, close the lever, let the lever go. The old-fashioned pumping way of bleeding the brakes up, but we've got a vacuum gauge, a vacuum pump nowadays, so we'll attach the vacuum onto the calipers and literally suck the fluid through the system. Makes everything considerably faster. So brakes are now bled up. Using the vacuum system is considerably quicker and saves you a load of pumping. Sometimes I don't mind a bit of pumping, but when I'm doing my brakes it can get a little bit tiresome. So lever is feeling good. I have to admit, when I get right to the end, I like to turn the vacuum off and just do a couple of pumps by hand, and then you get the actual vision of exactly how many bubbles or any bubbles are coming out. And the last caliper, when I come around here, I had a lovely moment where I was literally just, lever was just a little bit soft, pulled it a little bit harder, cracked that one off, lovely big bubble of air out, and then we were absolutely tip-top with a nice firm lever. So happy with that. And the next thing I need to do is connect the brake switch up. I've cut the old brake switch off, but I have left a little bit of wiring on it in case I ever do need to refit it. But I am crimping the new one dead in line, so I'm not having a push connector or anything. I'm just going hardcore, crimping them together, put some heat shrink over the top of it in a minute, shrink that down, tuck it in out of the way, in there a bit, and basically tied it up, and then we're done. It's also worth a mention with the HEL master cylinder, you can actually adjust the lever ratio, so basically the pivot point from there to there, and basically if you have that really short, you'll get more lever travel, but you'll be able to actually generate more force, and you tend to get a little bit more feel. If you have the distance between the pivot and the lever further apart, the lever will feel stiffer, but will actually generate less power. Now to do the adjustment, you actually have to take the pivot out and change this little eccentric around. So I've read the instructions, it involves taking the sort of adjuster out, and there's a little bit of messing around involved in it, but it does give me the option if I decide I want either a firmer lever or a slightly softer lever feel, I can change that later. But to begin with, I'm just going to ride it exactly as HEL supply it and see how good it is. Just got home on the Tuono, took the slightly more interesting route home, and those brakes are spectacularly better than the standard ones. There's so much more power, you don't have to pull the lever anywhere near as hard, but like round town and places, there's still plenty of feel for them. They're not sort of overly aggressive when you're pootling, but when you want them, whew, that was worth every penny of that upgrade. That was mega. So yes, the suspension service is still to be done on the Tuono, but I'll do that in a separate video. So hopefully you've enjoyed this one. You'll join me again when we're having that apart again. And thank you for watching, and join me again next time for some more motorbike fun.